time fight coming up this weekend at bantamweight. Looking to set the table, looking to get fresh and get excited. We have the return of Journey Newson, who's taking on the UFC debuting Fernie Garcia, representing Fortis MMA. And in this fight, I say the returning Journey Newson because he's been out for a year and 7 months since his last fight where he got knocked out quite badly against the Zohan, Randy Costa. And so you do look at it for Journey Newson. It's been an interesting run in the UFC. He makes his UFC debut on 12 days' notice, replacing Bellator champion, I should say now former Bellator. No, he still is, because the interim champ is Raufeon Stott. So, yes, current Bellator champion Sergio Pettis, who's supposed to take on Ricardo Ramos. Out is Pettis. In steps Newson. He ends up losing to Ricardo Ramos. And in that fight, was it a striking defense that evaded him? No, it was actually his takedown defense. So kind of crazy in that one for Journey Newson because realistically, at this point in his life, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He trains out of Impact Jiu-Jitsu. And he's a guy where you look at the way that he fights, then you look at his record, and it's just kind of crazy because the guy that we've seen in his 3 UFC fights, a loss to Ramos, a knockout win over Domingo Plarte, overturned to a no contest because of the green good giggles, and then a win. Well, no, it wasn't a win that he had against Randy Costa. It was a worse way to lose. It's been weird for Newson. He's been off for over a year. You kind of try and listen to rumblings as to, why has Journey Newson been away? I try to do the background research for these things, so it seems like it was a knee injury. I see on his Instagram he's been kind of getting some work in at the UFC PI, working with the psychiatrist there to get himself back into it, working through his knee woes. And then I tried to listen to a podcast that was an hour and 20 minutes long with MMA Roasted Adam Hunter. He also had, other than Journey Newsom, he had, and I want to make sure that I get it right, Jasmine St. Clair. Jasmine St. Clair. She was in dirty movies in the 90s, and she also wrestled in ECW. So Adam Hunter doing the damn thing. But for Newson, didn't really touch on it. He's got an interesting test taking on Fernie Garcia, primarily known for his boxing, and a guy who's been a giant favorite in his time over with LFA. Fought a very interesting fight on Dana White's Contender Series because he also zigged where he zagged, and he's not really a knockout puncher. Gets a first-round knockout win over with Dana White's Contender Series. So an interesting matchup we have coming up this weekend.
Fernie Garcia, you're right. Not really a knockout puncher. Really nice boxing technique, though, for an MMA fighter. Someone who will throw in combination, and I know you love this, goes to the body well with his combinations. Someone who... The best way of describing it is, and this is going to be a Teddy Atlasism, it's like mosquitoes on a windshield. He gives you a lot to think about up top, gets you to raise your hands, and then he'll go to the body, be it with knees. He's not a huge kicker. He will go knees to the body every now and then just because of the distance when he's boxing, but he will go to the body a lot with his hands. And in this fight against Journey Newson, it's weird because you're right. Garcia, a big favorite in a lot of his fights, especially as of late. I thought going into this fight, he would be another very big favorite over Journey Newson because the Journey Newson that I was promised when he came into the UFC is not the guy who we've got. And I know this sounds weird, but I had a fairly high hopes for him. I know this is always one of those things like, who's a fighter you thought would be really good who never really turned into the fighter you thought they were going to become? Journey Newson's kind of that guy for me. To me, he fights like Johnny Hendricks did at the later stage of his career. You're a wrestler, you can wrestle, you can grapple, but you fall in love too much with your own power. And it is like Journey Newson's bought into his own hype. He's someone who wings massive power shots in the feet. And if they land, yeah, they look great. Ask Domingo Plarte how it went. He hit him with one shot and absolutely destroyed him. But the problem is with Newsom, he doesn't have anything on the in-between. Anything inside those big flurries or those big explosions, he doesn't really throw a lot in combination. He's not much of a kicker. He has the wrestling in his back pocket, but it's not really something we've seen enough of at the UFC level. And that's why I wonder, what's Journey Newson going to do in this fight if the striking's not going well for him against Fernie Garcia? I think he has the wrestling advantage in this matchup, don't get me wrong. But Newson's a guy who... He's a good wrestler, but it's almost like Yoel Romero. How many times did we see Yoel complete a takedown just for the person on the bottom to spring back up to their feet? It's weird. You would assume with his level of wrestling, he would also have a very high level of top control, but with Newson, it does feel like the guys underneath can escape sometimes.
Well, and the weirdest part about it, so you look at Journey, and he's known as a grappler, but if you watch his fights in the UFC, you wouldn't think this guy's a grappler. And again, with Fernie Garcia, you look at it, his last win was his first ever knockout, and his first round finish since in 3 years. So he's not necessarily known as a finisher. The thing that I like about Fernie Garcia is, again, lots of great flurries, mixes up his shots, really good shot selection, does not throw kicks. Like Fernie Garcia does not kick. He's a boxer in MMA, and he's not much of a grappler either. So if I was to stack up the skills, which, listen, you go back and you watch Dana White's Contender Series, I always love it when they show those, the where they rank their stats. So they went with a 4 on his Fernie Garcia striking, a 4 on his wrestling, a 2.5 on his grappling, and a 2 on his experience. And again, I touched on the fact that Garcia was a big favorite in his 3 fights leading into the UFC. When he took on Hayes, he was a minus 950. Won that fight by split decision, but it was a chintzy split decision. 2 of the judges scored at 30-27. One had it 29-28 Hayes, which was an awful scorecard. Garcia definitely won that fight. Then he goes out in there against Batten Gonzalez. He is a minus 320 in that one, and then against Weems, he's a minus 250. He was also a favorite against the short notice replacement that he took on Dana White's Contender Series in Weems, who also missed weight in that fight, weighed 139 for 135. So again, Fernie Garcia's got jiu-jitsu in his back pocket. He is a purple belt in his own right, trains out of Fortis MMA with the likes of Damon Jackson. You see him on his Instagram. You also see Ocho Peterson in the corner of Fernie Garcia, laying down a lot of swear words. My favorite part about watching the LFA tape on Fernie Garcia is a Ron Kruk Savage moment.
Complexion of this fight completely. Ron, I think you have a phone call, but...
They know not to call me during a broadcast. It's the press box, man.
Ron Kruk probably never thought he was getting memed. Man got memed, but an awesome response to Pat Miletich. So I look at this fight, Matt, as Fernie Garcia is definitely the better boxer. Like, without a doubt. More crisp, more technical boxer. He can throw more at you. Newson's obviously got the X factor, the power between these two guys.
But that's the thing about MMA. You don't get scored for defense, and people don't really care about volume if you're fighting a power puncher. I agree with everything you said, but the thing is, Journey Newson can hit him 3 times in a round, and that can still make up for whatever Fernie Garcia was able to do before that, and that's what I worry about in this fight. I do think the numbers could favor Fernie Garcia at the end of the fight, but I do worry, what if he gets taken down 1 time in a round and he spends a minute off his back? What if he does get hit by 1 big shot? Because he doesn't have the real, genuine finishing ability, and I do question his finishing ability at the UFC level too, because it's one thing to get split decisions on, like, LFA. It's another thing to go out there and get finished wins at the UFC level. So I just worry about how can Garcia get back some of those big moments if Journey Newson is able to have them.
So we have a look at the odds for this fight. You've got Journey Newson, who opened a plus 130s, plus 135. Garcia opened at a minus 150s, minus 165. We have a look at the Tapology votes. They're surprised to us, there to you. I'm going to say over-under on the guy who's won a number of fights in a row versus the guy who's lost a number of fights in a row. I'm going to say over-under 67.5% Garcia.
Do you think it's over? You said that the other way around, I think. I think Garcia will be the favorite.
Yeah, Garcia is a giant favorite with the fans. 636 total votes, 91% Garcia, 38% by decision, 55% by knockout. The man's won 1 fight by knockout. 9% of fans have Newson to win, 68% of them have him to win by decision. This is an interesting fight. It's a little bit of an odd fight. Who are you picking here?
If Journey Newson's the fighter that I think he is, he should win this fight. But he's not the fighter I think he is at all. Fernie Garcia on the feet, I do like his volume quite a bit more in this matchup. But again, I do worry about what happens if he gets taken down for like a minute and a half. Is he going to be able to do something big himself in the second half of the round and then get it back in the judges' mind? I just think he'll be steady enough throughout the fight to be able to get a decision, but it should be a fun fight.
Yeah, it really is a weird one. I mean, if you look at it on Instagram, it seems like Journey Newson's been practicing in the gi for the last year and a half. So if that is the case and he goes in there, begins to wrestle, goes for his grappling, huge opportunity to win. But for me, I do like the activity out of Garcia. The one giant thing for Fernie Garcia, he doesn't check leg kicks. He gets kicked terribly in that Hayes fight where Garcia was a minus 950 favorite. That's what led Hayes into that fight, was those leg kicks. And realistically, when you watch Fernie Garcia box, he doesn't really switch stances. So if you can really eliminate that lead leg, it could cause him a lot of problems. Oh, by the way, Journey Newson doesn't throw a ton of kicks either. So it should be an interesting matchup. I do ever so slightly have Fernie Garcia in this one. So let us know down below in the comments section who you have in this big-time bantamweight fight. Up at the top of the card, 2 title fights. Carlos Esparza, Rose Namajunas, and then Gaethje looking to challenge Charles Oliveira. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.